Good morning, everyone. My name is
Mar-
Jim D. My name is James D. Simone, and I represent the Rivera family. With me today is Sylvia Imelda Rivera, the mother of Daniel Rivera, as well as Elizabeth Badagon, who is the mother of Daniel Rivera's minor son, who we're leaving his name anonymous for this case at this point in time. And we're here today because 4 Los Angeles Police Department officers violated their oath of what it means to be a police officer. We intend to hold these officers accountable through a federal court lawsuit. In August of 2020, Daniel Rivera, like George Floyd in the trial that we can see across America today, was face down in a prone position. He was not resisting arrest, and he was in need of medical attention. What did the LAPD do? They tased this man 4 times as he was lying face down. The use of a taser was totally unnecessary, and it was uncalled for. You simply do not use that level of force, an electroshock to the body, when someone is laying down and not resisting. Instead of trying to preserve the life of Daniel Rivera, these LAPD officers used unnecessary and excessive force by tasing him while he was laying face down on the ground, posing no threat. And then they handcuffed his arms and hobbled his legs and forced him down into the prone position, a position which is well known to law enforcement to interfere with breathing and to pose an unnecessary risk of death. And we heard this week and last week in the Derek Chauvin murder of George Floyd trial. It's been known for decades that once you handcuff and hobble a person's leg, you place them on their side, you sit them up. What you don't do is have 4 officers press him face down into the ground with their hands and with their body weight, as was done here. And especially when these officers know that one of their brethren, one of their LAPD officers, with the full knowledge and acquiescence of all the officers there, tased Daniel Rivera not once, not twice, not 3 times, 4 electric charges into his body while he was lying down on the ground and not resisting, not being aggressive, and not posing a threat to those officers in any manner. And today we filed a federal civil rights lawsuit on behalf of Daniel Rivera's 17-year-old son and his mother, Sylvia Imelda Rivera, to get justice for his family for this wrongful death. Now, what brought the LAPD to use force and police tactics to cause the death of Daniel Rivera? On August 14th, 2020, there were reports that a man in the neighborhood was knocking on doors and that he broke a window. He was still outside, hadn't gotten into anyone's home. And when the LAPD officers arrived, they could see Mr. Rivera. And as he's climbing a fence, they order him to lay face down on the ground. He climbs over the fence, goes down to the bottom of a wash there because it's a steep decline. And what does he do? He obeys the commands. He's laying face down on the ground when the LAPD officers approach him. And in fact, the LAPD officers radio. He is laying face down in the wash. 4 officers approach him with guns drawn and tell him to lie on his stomach. Let me see your hands. Well, Daniel Rivera appears to be unconscious, lying on the ground with his hands above his head. And the video shows that he's motionless. He's not threatening. And the officers then say, let's go hands-on. And when they go hands-on, they immediately start applying forceful pressure on his back. And they tell him, give me your hands. And as they tell Daniel Rivera to give them his hands, what does he do? He takes his hands and he puts them behind his head. He does exactly what the officers have commanded him to do. And as the LAPD officers handcuff his hands, they're using body weight on him. And his hands are being twisted. And they threaten to tase him. Mr. Rivera is not hitting the officers. He's not fighting with the officers. They are in the process of handcuffing him when one of the officers grabs Mr. Rivera's head and grabs his neck and forces his face head down. Without further warning, without provocation, you can feel the effects of the taser on Daniel Rivera's body as it courses through his body as he has 4 officers on him. Now, you won't be able to see that tasing because the LAPD has released body cam videos that only show the top of Mr. Rivera and not what was going on at the bottom. But it's been confirmed through the Los Angeles Police Department in the autopsy report that they did tase him 4 times. And after the tasing, when he's completely handcuffed, they place him on his side briefly. And he is in obvious medical distress. He is convulsing. And even though he's in this obvious distress, how do these Los Angeles Police Department officers act after putting him in this situation? He's now surrounded by 6 officers. His hands are handcuffed behind his back. His feet are hobbled. They put him on his stomach and they press his back down. They press him down on the ground in a face down position, a position we know through decades of training in law enforcement that causes positional asphyxiation. It is an unnecessary risk of death to place someone in that position. And they do this for nearly 3 minutes. While Daniel Rivera is in obvious medical distress and discomfort, they hold him face down on the ground. They then turn him on his side. And shortly after the paramedics arrive, Daniel Rivera dies on the scene. And the LAPD officers have to admit, Daniel Rivera reacted to the taser, but they had to make up an excuse. They say he was trying to fight us. He was bucking. Well, we've provided the whole video. None of that is true. Daniel Rivera surrendered to these officers, and it was the officers' unnecessary and unreasonable use of force by tasing him, kneeling on his back, placing their arms across his neck, and putting him in a position of positional asphyxiation that caused some tension of his body, but that physical reaction is very different than active or passive resistance or aggression, which is what is needed for the use of a taser. There was nothing aggressive about what Daniel Rivera was doing. And the Los Angeles Coroner's Office has confirmed that one of the causes of death was cardiopulmonary arrest following prone physical restraint with electromuscular disruption. And yes, some drugs were found in Mr. Rivera's system, but the LAPD officers could see that he was laying down on the ground in a compromised position, incapacitated, not moving. They suspected he was on drugs. Tasers can only be used when a person is showing aggression or a threat. And Mr. Rivera was not resisting at all or threatening anyone. You know, they say that the shock from a taser causes pain described as excruciating. Over 1,000 people in the United States of America have been killed by tasers. Amnesty International has described the use of a taser on a passive subject like Mr. Rivera as violating international standards of torture, that it's cruel, inhuman, degrading treatment, and it violates the basic principles of law enforcement. And these law enforcement officers have been trained. I mean, I've been an attorney in Los Angeles for 35 years doing civil rights cases. We've known about positional asphyxiation since at least the 90s when I first started doing these cases, that Multiple cases of death by restraint have been associated with tying someone down in a prone position, especially when you tie their legs and their hands behind their back. And law enforcement officers are taught to avoid restraining people in that way. These LAPDs ignored both their training and their obligation to preserve the sanctity of life. The Rivera family has suffered a loss, the loss of a father, the loss of his son. Yes, Daniel had his challenges, but Elizabeth Barragan, the mother of Daniel Rivera's son, and his mother, Sylvia Imelda Rivera, will speak to you about the impact this has had on their lives. Now, the LAPD has these videos, and this happened back in August. We've not heard of any action taken against these officers. They haven't released the video of the officer who tased Mr. Rivera, even though he should have had it on, and it will show how completely unnecessary and uncalled for the use of the taser was. We are determined to get justice for the Rivera family and help put a stop to the LAPD's use of excessive force. When police officers violate these types of policies, when they violate their oath to preserve life instead of hastening someone's death, swift and prompt corrective action and consequences should follow, but it doesn't happen that way with the LAPD. But if the LAPD won't do their job, we will let a Los Angeles federal court jury render justice for the officer's excessive force, resulting in what we contend here is the wrongful death of Daniel Rivera. And I'd now like to introduce the mother of Daniel Rivera, Sylvia Imelda Rivera. She's going to give some brief comments in Spanish, followed by Elizabeth Barragan, the mother of Daniel's minor son. Thank you.
El extrañar mucho y tener, no sé, vivir con este dolor, el extrañarlo a él, su presencia, los momentos que él siempre hacía conmigo antes de llegar yo al trabajo, porque él vivía para aquel rumbo, el siempre estar esperándome para gozar el momento, el tomar un café juntos, el hablarme de diario y decirme, hola mamá, ¿cómo estás? ¿Ya comiste? Recuerda que tengo un propósito en la vida para ti, para mi hijo, el seguir adelante y trabajar para este tiempo, estos años que Dios nos permita gozarlos juntos. El momento de que todas las mañanas me hablaba para levantarme, para decirme, nomás mamá, no tengo tiempo, pero nomás para decirte el buenos días, cuídate, échale para adelante, porque la vida es bonita. El momento de siempre 2, 3 veces en la semana, al llegar a la casa y tocarme la puerta o dejarme un mensaje escrito afuera diciéndome, te quiero, mamá, cuídate. No sé cómo Diosito me ha dado la fuerza para seguir adelante y poder ayudar también al hijo de él, que tal vez se hace muchas preguntas el por qué le pasó esto a mi papá, el por qué la justicia es así. Yo también me lo pregunto y no lo sé. Eso, yo lo único que quiero y pido es justicia. Algo que se actuó y se hizo mal contra mi hijo. No estoy de acuerdo y no soy persona que agarro odio o coraje contra esas personas, pero lo justo es justo y es lo que quiero que se haga en memoria de él, no dejarlo por el olvido, ni mucho menos, para que también yo esté tranquila y estén tranquilos todos los demás que lo queremos y lo extrañamos. Y siempre vamos a vivir con eso en la mente y nuestro corazón y echarle ganas a la vida y que Dios nos ayude para sin esa presencia que no tenemos, que es él, mi hijo Daniel, esté descansando en paz y al mismo tiempo perdonar a las personas que hicieron esto y también que pare toda esta injusticia que hacen contra otros más jóvenes, personas de edad, qué sé yo, cosas injustas que no está bien. Gracias.
On behalf of my son, I would like to say on August 14th, 2020, my son lost his father, Daniel Rivera, in LAPD custody. We watched the video. We saw him being tased multiple times and him passing. It was hard on my son. It's been hard on him. And now he doesn't get the opportunity to grow having that relationship with his father. We are seeking justice for Danny. We hope that this does not continue to happen to other families. He was a human being. No one deserves to be treated that way, regardless of race, ethnicity, or lifestyle. He was a human being. And we hope we can get justice for him. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia and Elizabeth. We will open this to questions if anybody has any questions. Anyone?
Yes, can you hear us?
Now we can.
Can you tell us where, what court, you said you filed the lawsuit in court, in federal court. Was that here in Los Angeles?
Yes, Los Central District, United States District Court Central District here, and a file stamped copy is available with the materials we're providing.
And can you tell us what are you seeking in this lawsuit? One more time, please. I know you briefly spoke about that, but can you share an amount of money that you're looking for in this lawsuit?
We let the jury decide what is fair compensation for the loss of a life. There's not a particular number that is addressed in the lawsuit.
Would it be possible that his mom, Mrs. Rivera, would be able to tell us a little bit more about her son, other than what she just told us? I wanted to ask her if she was living with him and if she knew what he was doing out, and maybe she can share a little bit more about how much she's going to miss him.
Can you translate that for her? Or
Sí.
You could ask that question if
Sí.
you'd like to ask it in Spanish to her.
Ok. Señora, le saluda aquí Salvador Durán de Univisión y quería preguntarle si nos puede contar un poco sobre un poquito más sobre su hijo. ¿Vivía él con usted? O sea, obviamente siendo su hijo es un vacío inmenso y lo va a extrañar mucho, señora. ¿Qué es lo que más va a extrañar de él y qué quiere usted que el público sepa de su hijo, señora?
Pues de extrañarlo, como dije hace momentos, la presencia y el siempre,
Todos los días.
el que todos los días convivíamos, aunque sea 5 minutos para un café o lo que sea, pero todos los días nos mirábamos, porque para el rumbo que yo iba a trabajar, él vivía para allá, él no vivía conmigo. Él estaba en un programa que estaba estudiando y él tenía tiempo que no vivía conmigo. Él era una de las personas siempre muy amorosa, muy atenta, muy cariñoso. Y siempre me trataba, yo le decía, ay, ¿por qué me tratas como una niña? Dice, no, es que es tanto amor que yo te tengo o que siento por ti que así te lo demuestro.
Señora, y de todo esto, ¿qué es lo más difícil para usted?
Pues el no tener su presencia, el no convivir nomás con él, sino que toda la vida lo he hecho.
¿Es hijo único o no?
No, tengo 4, me quedan 3.
Okay, gracias. Thank you.
Así con eso no vamos a perder más tiempo.
Do we have another question?
So you in the video you said that at the beginning, when he's down in the wash, he is not moving
chair,
and he's not
tampoco está.
resisting. But at one point when they begin to place the cuffs on him, it does seem as if he's trying to either avoid avoid being arrested or maybe even resisting. That is what LAPD says. What do you make of that? Because you said he's not resisting, but LAPD in the video, they say he was resisting arrest.
I don't think the video shows any resistance. It at most shows an individual who is being pulled on in different directions. They're using multiple handcuffs. One of the handcuffs gets placed in his hand, and then they say let it go, but it's unclear how with his hand with a handcuff on he's even in a position to let that go. So it's sometimes not easy to know when when individuals who are being restrained what exactly officers want them to do. The only command that is given is show me your hands, and he immediately puts his hands in view of them. And so I don't see that video and see someone who is actively resisting. I see someone who is doing their best to react to these forces that are being placed on him from many different angles. As a practical matter, the officers do handcuff him without incident. There's 4 officers on him. There's just no reason to tase someone who's down on the ground. If it takes an extra couple minutes to handcuff him, so be it. You don't torture someone who's in that compromised position.
Oh yeah, you said that what happened to Mr. Rivera is a form of torture, correct?
I think getting the electric volts charged into your body is a form of torture. I mean, there's a place in law enforcement, perhaps for tasers, when it can be used for someone who's aggressive, who is posing a threat to someone. Those factors were just not present here with Mr. Rivera. He wasn't posing a threat as he's face down on the ground, and the officers have him.
And one last question. So in the video, you actually see the officers talking a lot about how he may be under the influence of something. Can you address that portion in relationship to what the outcome of the incident?
Well, I think 2 things here. If police officers believe that someone is under the influence and they're just showing passivity and lying on the ground, it means that they're in a vulnerable position and they should react and act accordingly, and that it would especially show why the taser is inappropriate here. The coroner also addresses the methamphetamine use and says that could also have contributed to his death. But the legal standard here is a contributing factor. And so absent the tasing, absent the positional asphyxiation, absent the pressure on Mr. Rivera, we contend that he would still be alive, and that it was the combination of these factors that caused his death, but it's the officers who are in control and in a position to obey the law and act to preserve life instead of acting in a way that once again causes someone to die.
Thank you. And one last time, can you tell us your name one more time, please, sir?
Sure. It's James DeSimone, DeSimone, and I'm the principal partner and attorney in V. James DeSimone Law, based here in Los Angeles.
Did you already upload the copy of the lawsuit for us, or not yet? We'd like to get a copy of it, please.
I believe, yes, it should be. It's been filed, and it's part
in
of
the Google Drive folder.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Okay, one last ask. Any other questions? Then we'll let everyone enjoy the rest of their day and do their jobs. Okay, thank you for everyone who attended this press conference and for your interest here. We in the family appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.